Hey everyone, welcome to Shooting Complex. Today, we are going to be launching a new series of videos that are about all of the different feds formats of competitive shooting, with the hope that you would find one that suits you and your needs. Because when most people think of competitive shooting, they just think of USPSA or maybe even IDPA, but there is a whole world of shooting outside of just those two things that you can compete in and have fun. Now, today, we're going to cover Two-Gun Action Challenge. Specifically, I had an opportunity to go to Iowa and shoot Cornfield Brutality, and honestly, it was a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed it. While I was there, I acquainted myself with Russell Fagan, and a big thank you goes out to him because he agreed to lend some of his time to do an interview with me to make this way more informative. And if you want to listen to that interview, you can listen to it at the end of this video. And so a big thank you to KE Arms and him, and if you can, please support KE Arms financially. They're not accepting any donations, but they are under attack from a frivolous lawsuit from GWAC, so if you can, please do what you can to lend your financial assistance to them. One of my squad mates had one of their polymer monolithic lower receivers for their AR-15, and I gotta say, it was a very, very handy rifle, and it would be a real shame if those things just became collector's items. I was bogged down with my very heavy Block 2 M4 clone with the SOCOM barrel, so it's very, very front-end heavy, and anyway, so nonetheless, I'm going to be doing a video that's on all of the gear that I use to shoot. Well, I'm talking about all of the different ins and outs of Cornfield Brutality and Two-Gun Action Challenge. I'm going to be playing footage of that match so that way you can get a visual as to what it looked like. So, I hope you enjoy. So let's take a look and see what Cornfield Brutality was like. We're going to cover a couple topics like the rules and the feeling, and in my view, the feeling is the most important because that really determines if you're going to have fun and whether or not you're going to keep on coming back. The rules. The best part of the rules is that they are open source. Now, I'm speaking specifically about the rule set for Two-Gun Action Challenge. Brutality matches are a little bit different. Those are like major matches. In-range TV, they really want to hold on to that intellectual property of theirs, so you can't host a Brutality match yourself, but you can do a Two-Gun Action Challenge match yourself. At Cornfield Brutality, they had a couple of divisions. The one that I participated in, Partisan, Armored plus P. They even had an Iron Sights division. Partisan division, I really thought that this was a unique division because you had to make choices about what you were going to compete with. And so, what do I mean by that? They give you 3 points to allocate as a competitor across your weapons. 1 point per optic, either on your rifle or handgun. 1 point for larger capacity magazines, which is anything beyond 17 rounds for a pistol and 30 for a rifle. 1 point for a pistol compensator, bipod, and a few others. Now it's up to you to choose how to spend those points. So for me personally, I put a point into 40-round mags for my AR and 1 for 170mm mags for my Glock, and then a final point for my Aimpoint Comp M5 and EOTech 3X magnifier. I really liked the choices that you had to make for this because you had to anticipate, like, okay, how do I want to shoot? What do I think I'm going to shoot? With other leagues, it's very straightforward, like, hey, you have limited division. You have to shoot 40 for a major, can make a few choices, but I really like how they kind of set it up at Cornfield Brutality, so I thought that was very unique. With Armored plus P, this is going to be the equivalent of open division. If you're not familiar with like what an open division is, it's like the anything goes division. So for Cornfield Brutality, you must wear armor and a helmet. The plate carrier system has to have front and rear hard armor plates. They must be worn during each course of fire, and plates have to be rated to stop rifle calibers or weigh 7 pounds each. A bump helmet is acceptable too, so if you really want to get your Gothic Serpent LARP on, you can modify a skateboard helmet and mount your NVGs, because skateboard helmets were approved. Now the scoring is just time plus. They take your total time, however long it takes you to run the stage, and they add it to whatever penalties incurred, if you did incur any, which I think is a pretty straightforward way. So what makes a brutality match a brutality match? Well, Brutality Match is just like I said, it's Two-Gun Action Challenge. So what's the action? The action is the physical component of it. Now, there still is a strong emphasis on shooting. If we had a spectrum of athleticism versus shooting, It's not quite a tactical games. Tactical games, in my view, is really more like a CrossFit event with some shooting. Two Gun Action Challenge really meets in the middle. There's still a strong emphasis on shooting, so if you do shoot well, you can come out ahead, but the physical component makes it very unique. If you're a decently athletic person, you really won't have a problem with it. At least that was my experience at Cornfield. So, what is the feeling of it, right? That's just a lot of fun. I personally had a ton of fun at Cornfield Brutality. In my interview with Russell, he described the feeling of shooting Two Gun Action Challenge as you versus the stage, and this perfectly encapsulates my experience, and I want to explore that more. It works at two levels. One, the stages are linear. And two, there is a sense of camaraderie amongst the squad because of the athletic challenge to some of the stages. So what do I mean by linear? It's linear because there's only one way to shoot the stage. In Brutality, the mental challenge of shooting a stage is becoming familiar with the stage brief and knowing what you're supposed to do and when. The stages are choreographed according to the stage directions, and time-wise, they're much longer. When you compete at a USPSA or like IDPA event, you're there for a minimum of like 4 to 6 hours, not even including setup, and you shoot for maybe a minute of time. A minute would be a long time of shooting in USPSA, but in a Brutality match, in a Two Gun Action Challenge match, you're shooting actually for much longer. Some of the par times are like 180 seconds. Now, to get back to what to focus on linear. So in a USPSA, it's really incumbent on the shooter to develop a winning strategy that they best believe will be the winning strategy and dedicating yourself to memorizing the plan. So Cornfield Brutality was a very different and unique challenge for me than I was used to in this regard. I didn't really have to stress myself out thinking about the most optimized plan and then executing it perfectly. I spent most of my time watching other competitors shoot and socializing with my squad mates, which really contributed to an overall more enjoyable event. And this plays directly into the camaraderie that I experienced, because you're really trying to feel like you overcome the stage itself rather than beating out competition. When I was on the kettlebell toss, people were cheering me on, and I was like, you people are supposed to be booing me, or you're not even saying anything at all. And so it was very fun. It added a really unique dimension. And coaching is allowed too. Now, the strength and athletic element of Cornfield was pretty enjoyable. In one stage, there was a kettlebells that you can swing. You could choose which weight that you wanted. I opted for the lightest one because I really wanted to throw it far. If you're unathletic or out of shape, some of these events will challenge you. I did watch several people struggle with tire flips and kettlebell throws and the farmer's carries. So if you fall into that category, don't despair. Just use it as motivation to really develop your strength and conditioning. Overall, I cannot recommend Two Gun Action Challenge enough. Thank you so much for sticking around, and in a moment you're going to hear my interview with Sinistral Rifleman, aka Russell Fagan. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoy. First off, thanks for taking your time. I know you're pretty busy. In fact, I think you just wrapped up a match, didn't you, this week, correct?
I just shot Red October yesterday at Rio Salado, and the week before I shot the Arizona State PCC match.
Oh, nice. One thing that I was really surprised about was, so I shot Cornfield Brutality in Iowa, and that was the first time I'd shot any Brutality match, but I'd been competing in USPSA for years now, and I was really surprised the amount of first-time shooters that came out for Cornfield Brutality and were actually pretty decent. Like I was like, like a lot of even the people in my own squad, they're like, well, it's just my first match, and I'm just curious to see how we're gonna do. And I was like, damn it, I got a bunch of people that are gonna like hold up the squad or like whatever, and then come like time to put everybody on the clock, and I was like, oh wow, like this is really surprising. The skill floor has raised considerably.
I think there's a couple things going into that when you look at a Brutality match. Is that Carl has often described Brutality and Two Gun Action Challenge match as like drills from a class on the clock. So there's a lot of people getting tactical training, or at least watching tactical training and doing it on their own on their range or in the desert or in the woods or whatever. So if they have that baseline of skills, coming out and doing a Brutality match, even though it's physically challenging and sometimes we have hard marksmanship challenges, it's more accessible than a USPSA match in that all the stuff they're doing, they can practice on their own. It's really hard to practice a 20 to 30 target USPSA stage on your own, but you can throw a kettlebell and drop prone and shoot a target at 100 yards on your own pretty easy.
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting. So I'm gonna start asking some of these questions now. So like to go back, like what for you makes a brutality match a brutality match?
Well, brutality is kind of like our two gun action challenge match nationals, and that we take the stuff that Carl's been doing at 2GACM since 2009 and put it into a major match format. And I think fundamentally, some of the things we require are physical challenges of some kind, whether that's moving things, throwing things, crawling through or under things, some amount of running, combined with uh, shooting challenges that are not crazy on their own. But when you combine it with that physical stress, the difficulty level gets ramped up quite a bit.
So that's actually pretty interesting, um, because I'm used to shooting matches that are like not physical at all, and I mean, in USPSA, there's basically no physical component to it. Um, but then on the other, like on one extreme, you have tactical games. So
Yeah. So if I was going to compare us to tactical games, I think tactical games is like 5 to 10% shooting and 90 to 95% physical. From what I've seen, it's like a qual course, but with a ton of CrossFit thrown in. I
yeah,
think brutality matches are more of an even balance of like 50-50. And some stages might be more physical, some stages might be more marksmanship centric, but you still got to shoot well to win the event.
yeah, definitely. I From the footage that I've seen of a tactical games, the emphasis is like way more on the athleticism, and the shooting doesn't really seem like almost like what you said. It's like a qualification course. So you've been shooting for like a really long time now. So when was the first idea for a brutality match or something similar?
Well, Carl, along with some other people, ran the first one in 2018, and I was not involved in the admin and logistics of running the event then. Consequently, I think that's the one I performed the best at because I could just go shoot the match and focus on shooting the match. And that one, I won the first Armored Plus P division and got second overall. Um, but in 2019, I started actively helping him on the admin and logistics side of things because that's just kind of what I'm good at. I have a lot of match administrative experience. I've run major matches myself. I've run state level rifle matches myself. I've been part of running, like, say, SMM3G for a couple years. I was on the board for that as a media coordinator guy, but I got to see how a major match was run at that level with 350 to 400 shooters. And a lot of what I do in my day job, aside from sales and marketing, is like admin and logistics stuff. So having my head in that space of these are the nuts and bolts of getting an event running, keeping things on schedule, logical rules, consistent enforcement, competitive equity. Those are all things that I'm pretty good at, and so that's why I started helping out in 2019. And gradually the way we've evolved this is Carl's the ideas guy. He comes up with the concepts for stages and the kind of the mission goals of the match, and I'm the guy that executes it.
Okay, pretty. That's really interesting. I didn't expect that Carl was like the mainly the ideas guy, just because I know he has experience with shooting and high power primarily. And like,
But he's also done cowboy action. He's also, like I said, run the local two gun match since
okay,
2009, and he's done a lot of tactical training classes too. I have more direct action shooting competition experience,
mhm.
but Carl's been running his flavor of this for a long time, and through trial and error at local events, built it into what it is today.
Cool. I gotcha. So at Cornfield Brutality, we had a conversation earlier, and you touched base on this earlier in our conversation just now. But to reiterate it to the audience, you described the stage design as linear, as opposed to how I would think of USPSA as more of like an open style shooting. Can you describe the decision behind making it more linear?
Yeah, so the term I often see used here at multi-gun and USPSA type events is freestyle. You have a shooting area, it's up to the shooter to decide what the best
Mhm.
order to engage everything in is, right? And once in a while, it'll be like part of a stage where it's like go to box A, shoot targets 1 through 3, etc., right? Uh, Brutality and 2 GACM style stages are linear in that, like, we're telling you, you're going to go to box A, you're going to do this.
Mhm.
Between box A and B, you're going to do this. At box B, you're going to do this, and there's no real deviation in how you attack the stage. And part of that is it's the best way to force people to do certain skills. Like in a multi-gun match, they might set up a particularly hard barricade that would encourage you to switch shoulders to shoot off your non-dominant side.
Mhm.
We'll just tell you you have to do it. And that's because we want people to test these skills. We don't want someone to do a hard lean, fall out of a box kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
you're We're going to dictate how you do it because we're testing particular skills. Um, and it also minimizes the amount of walls and props and nonsense we have to set up to accomplish the same type of shooting challenge. I don't know from my personal experience that having a bunch of walls and props and stuff to just restrict the flow of the shooter really adds anything to the challenge other than it's more work for the staff to set up and tear down.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, somebody who set up a lot of matches. Yeah, absolutely. So
And you can still have props and walls and barricades like, hey, we
yeah.
want you to shoot from a VTAC. We want you to shoot under this. We want you to shoot around this. Like things that have a purpose make sense. But using walls and props and fault lines to
Mhm.
just channel the shooter's movement seems like a lot of wasted setup time to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many matches. I saw the person who builds my 2011s. He's a pretty good shooter, and I can't even remember what's. I think this might have been like a state match or something. But they had taken the time on a stage to set up like two different doors. Well, everybody just ran around them because who would waste time opening a door on the clock when you can just like run around it?
Right. Right. And I've seen that shooting through the staff matches at the
Hmm.
major events here is they'll come up with something, and then as soon as it's game day, like someone's completely subverts it because it wasn't written into the stage description the right way.
Yeah, and so even with like what you mentioned that on like the freestyle stages, it's incumbent on the competitor to come up with a strategy and then spend time memorizing it and practicing it. And so for me, that was a really big shift when I shot Cornfield, is because I had to pay really careful attention to the stage brief, which is something I was not used to doing at all. And I actually like, hey, I was like, hey, can I just like when you're done reading it, can I just read it for myself? And I had to spend a lot of time not even watching how other people shot, but getting it in my head. This is how I need to shoot it. So the mental challenge, it was a unique mental challenge for me that I hadn't actually experienced before, and I thought that was kind of cool. So,
Yeah, and
oh, go
I
ahead.
guess for me at this point, those type of linear stages are easier.
Hmm.
I do not have the mental stress shooting them that I do, say, shooting any of the more recent matches I've shot at my home range here at Rio Salado because
Hmm.
the memorization there is like 90% of the stage.
Yeah.
The shooting challenge is not that difficult. It's memorizing the right positions and right footwork to see all the targets.
Hmm.
And I understand some people like that, but like it really is not my thing. Um, I want to be challenged marksmanship and uh, physical challenges on the stages. But like the memorization stuff just kind of drives me nuts, and it makes the whole event way more stressful and less enjoyable, particularly when coaching isn't allowed. And that's one of the differentiators with brutality matches. We allow coaching. Anyone who needs coaching is quite frankly not going to win the match anyway. But for all the novices and people even in the middle that are having a brain fart because this is the first time they've done this when they're gassed out. Um, it makes it way more um, accessible and fun than once the buzzer's off, no one can tell you anything.
Yeah, and just experiencing that at Cornfield, you mentioned coaching. Even the crowd and like the coaching and people, like, it was the first time I'd shot at a shooting event and people cheered. And like, oh wow, you did so good at that. I was like,
So
wow, this is very different.
I kind of liken it to, if have you ever watched Ninja Warrior, the obstacle course show?
Yeah.
Like, everyone, even the competitors, are cheering other competitors on because
Yeah.
it's you versus the stage. Like, you want other people to do well. You want someone to beat this thing, right? And like, when somebody has a good performance at the brutality matches, like, you don't have competitors in the stands going, "Oh man, he got me on that one." No, they're cheering him on. They're like, "Man, that guy put out a solid performance." Like, I watched a guy in Armored Plus P division at Cornfield like throw the kettlebell
Yeah.
30 yards in two throws, and I'm like, "Holy shit!" Like, that's impressive. And I mean, for me, it took, I think, 5 or 6 throws to get it all the way there and back. The full 50 yards.
Hmm.
So, like, good for him. Like, that was a impressive feat of strength, and he just laid down the hate on the targets.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That guy was like a refrigerator. He was really impressive with it. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. So speaking of like armored plus P division, what was the decision behind making it like the equivalent to open?
uh, most of our divisions, there's always a cost and a benefit, right? So armored division has been a division at 2GACM locally for a while, and its rules have always been open, but plus a plate carrier. So armored plus P, we just had minimum loadout requirements plus a helmet, and wearing a helmet's kind of a pain in the ass. Um, that is the thing I like the least about armored plus P, is wearing the helmet. It makes you less spatially aware. Um, it's strain on your neck. Your head has momentum when you're turning and stuff. It makes it harder to shoulder a rifle sometimes. So, like, there's the trade off. You have completely unlimited modern technology, but the cost is you got to wear all this stuff, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then you'll see, hey, like the iron sight division, for example, there is no gear requirement at all. Shooting with iron sights is hard enough as it is.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely is. Yeah, I heard you somebody asked you at Cornfield and you're like, "Yeah, we want to make it suck."
Yeah,
So,
pretty much, and that's why we've had people request we bring over the recon division from Finnish Brutality, which is like running 30 kilometers total between all the stages. We're not about that, but we're doing a division for Desert Brutality called Nightmare, which is armored plus P trooper. You hike into the range with all your stuff. The ammo you have on you is all you can use. Same with cleaning equipment, spare parts, etc. So armored plus P troopers division, but now Nightmare mode on top of that is the stages are going to be dramatically harder. And essentially, like, let's say the normal stage description is throw a 64-pound kettlebell and double tap a target. Nightmare is going to be like throw an 80-pound kettlebell and double tap 3 targets, like that kind of ramping it up even harder. I don't want to give too much away because, like,
right.
anybody who picked that, like, we even said, like, don't ask questions, like, do this if you know you want to do it. I'm not. I don't think I want to do it myself. It doesn't sound fun. Plus, setting up and running the match, I don't want to be completely dead after shooting the staff match.
Sure,
But
yeah.
we had a bunch of people sign up for it already. I think we're up to 19 shooters in Nightmare Division for Desert Brutality.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When I saw that come up, I was like, "Ah, I I love Doom." So, I was like, I need an excuse to get this patch, but I don't have like any armor or anything. So I'm like automatically disqualified from it. But it looks like a really fun challenge. Um, I'm not
Like,
gonna. I'm Go ahead.
during the staff match, we don't care if people par out. Like, normally, like kind of one of our standards for, like, running the staff matches, we test the stages, and, like, if I'm parring out on a stage, we know it's too much. For
Hmm.
nightmare mode, if people are parring out, oh well. Like, the idea is to make people par out. Like, if anyone finishes all the stages in nightmare under par, it means it was too easy. We're gonna make we'll make it even harder the next time.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's pretty interesting. And the targets will spawn back and they'll be twice as fast.
or just heavier stuff. I'm thinking like, hey, if this is normally a both hands pistol array, guess what? You're going to do it support hand only.
Oh, that's
Like
don't
that.
that's that's painful.
Yeah.
What one-handed support hand shooting?
Right.
That's pretty funny. So also for the for audience that's listening in on this, there's a lot of talk about like hit factor and time plus scoring. So what's the difference in why does brutality and more two guns settle on time plus scoring?
The reason we do time plus scoring is it's simpler to understand.
Hmm.
We also don't do scored hits on paper. I don't like percentage based scoring. So even the multi gun matches here that do like 2 hits anywhere or one alpha hit to neutralize do a percentage thing. So no matter how short or long the stage is, it becomes a points based thing, and the highest points win. I don't really like that because I think longer stages should be worth more of your score. Um, I'm not. I understand the arguments for making every stage equal,
Hmm.
but I would prefer if there's a 180-second stage and there's a 60-second stage. Well, the 180-second stage should count more for your score than the 60-second stage.
Okay, so that's pretty interesting. Yeah, interesting. Hmm.
And I also think it has to do with the length of the stages. Our stages are typically longer in general, whereas
Hmm.
in hit factor based or percentage based match points formats, the stages are usually 20 to 60 seconds,
Yes.
where our average stage time is 120 to 180 seconds, and a lot of brutality penalties are 60 seconds. So total time based scoring just works better for what we're trying to emphasize.
Yeah, I thought about that, and I'm like, well, if this was a hit factor, like some of these hit factor stages, I mean, like everybody's hit factor would be like 1 point, like whatever millionth out to a point that you'd want to do because they would all be really, really low. And it would
Right.
be, I think it would be, yeah, like you said, it would be very difficult for people to understand. They'd be like, oh, I got a 1. Is that good or is that bad? I have no idea. But on a short course, like you said, and you can have people hit like a 9 hit factor on something, depending on what it is. And immediately, like, oh, yeah, that's pretty good.
Right.
All right. So,
And what
oh, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, one other thing I forgot to mention earlier with a fundamental principle of brutality stage designs is
Hmm.
minimal reset.
Mm,
You might notice we use like essentially zero paper, and we use a lot of static steel or self resetting steel. Uh, I don't think having a lot of reset really adds much value uh, to a match if you can get away with it at the range you're at. Like obviously, like some ranges you have to shoot paper, you can't shoot steel, that kind of thing. But
right.
minimal reset makes the match flow better. It makes people have more fun. I was thinking about again, given some of the more recent matches I've shot, like as soon as I'm done shooting, I got to fill up my mags and I'm back to work, taping and pasting and resetting steel. Right.
Hmm.
So it kind of removes some of the fun out of the event. Whereas with brutality matches, I think most people are just sitting in the stands waiting their turn, watching people, getting to even appreciate the atmosphere of the event.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. I mean, I think about all the times where I've competed and trying to balance. Okay, I have to plan my choreography out for the stage to make sure it's perfect. But I just saw somebody who shot much better than I did, so now I have to change my plan at the last minute. And then I also have to, I have to go and I have to reset and help paste. It's a lot. It's a lot of a mental strain, and I guess it's not a surprise many people are crappy and are not cheering each other on more at these USPSA or whatever is going to come next if it collapses um, matches.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think we need to think about how to make these events more enjoyable to attend because ultimately you're spending a day or more of your time to attend an event with 4 to 5 minutes of shooting. So, like, what are you going to do to have fun in the meantime while you're there, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
and I think that's where brutality matches are unique in that it is a social event with a lot more camaraderie than I've seen at most multi-gun competitions. The closest thing I've experienced to it at a multi-gun match would be that the Iron Man 3 gun back in the day, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was 3 days of 12 to 14 hours on the range with stages that took up to 10 minutes to shoot.
Oh
And it was
wow.
that kind of like shared communal suffering aspect, where you were cheering people on there because you wanted them to get through the stage as well.
Wow, that's interesting. I have yet to shoot a 3-gun match. I don't even own a shotgun, honestly. So that's wow, a ten minute stage.
Yeah, by the time it ended, the par times were down to 6 to 7 minutes. But yeah, that was one of the formative competitive events for me. I first went there in 2002 and went there every year until it ended in 2016.
And you've also shot axe too. So how does that compare?
Well, Axe is the precursor to 2GACM. 2GACM split off from Axe over some differences of opinion on how the events should be run.
Okay.
And ultimately, like, I'm fundamentally for decentralization of shooting sports. What matters is your local club. Like,
Yes.
national organizations don't matter. Who's running the local club? Who's making sure things are happening at the local level and getting stuff done and getting new shooters in there and having a cadre of people that can run these things. National affiliation, whatever. Like, you can better address the needs of your local shooting community by just running events. Now, I think having core safety rules across the board makes sense for insurance and
Mhm.
liability perspectives. But equipment division, stage design, whatever, it's a free market. Let the shooters decide if this is the event they want to compete in.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I do agree with you on that, and I definitely share that same mentality about the shooting. And for me, I'm almost like in a bind. I like USPSA and I like the challenges that it presents, but I don't like the direction that things are going in. And but around me though, the local club, there's only one local club in Northwest Indiana where I live, and they only host USPSA. And then 20 minutes away, it's an IDPA night, and it's off the books. It's like it's an outlaw match, and then that's it. And then if I want to shoot, I either have to shoot in Wisconsin, which there are a lot of really good shooters in Wisconsin at the club that I go to there, but it's 2.5 hours away. And then the other club in Illinois is 2.5 hours away from me. So it's not like none of this is like practical. And I'd like to shoot off and branch out and do other things, but that's time and money.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing is in Arizona we're spoiled for choice. Like, I shoot a
Oh,
multi-gun
yeah.
match of some kind every weekend, and like there's pistol matches every night of the week. Uh, so everything's relative, right? And that's one of the things I got out of people that came to Cornfield was they had never done anything like this. It was amazing for them to attend because nothing like that was being done locally. Whereas for our crowd in Arizona, um, you know, this is a very common thing that we do almost every month.
Yeah. A lot of people don't even know practice score exists. They don't even know where to like sign up for many of these matches. And yeah, no, that's pretty interesting. So thanks. I'm gonna stop the recording right now. But before I do, for our audience, Godzilla film would you recommend they watch?
That is a tough one because I'm a lifelong Godzilla fan, and the my favorite currently is actually the American uh, legendary film Godzilla King of the Monsters because they brought everything into that one that I enjoyed from the Japanese films, but with higher production quality. It's quality monster fights. Who cares about the human plot? Godzilla gets beat up and then he kicks some ass. So that is the quintessential Godzilla movie.
That's the one where he fights Golden Ghidorah in like the stadium at the end.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I saw that one, and I saw King of the Mon or not King of the Monsters. Godzilla versus King Kong. I like both of
Yes.
them.